Okay, let's just jump right in. What if the word Islam doesn't actually mean what we all think it means? In this explainer, we're going to dig into a pretty radical idea from our source material. The idea that how we usually understand Islam, as a specific religion, might be a huge misreading of the Quran itself. And it all kicks off with this puzzle that's right there in the text. The Quran calls people like Abraham and even Jesus' disciples Muslims. And get this, it even says a dying pharaoh claimed to be one. Now, this is all happening centuries before the religion we know as Islam even existed. So how is that even possible? That's the big mystery we're going to try and crack open today. So what's going on here? Is this just a massive contradiction in the Quran? Or is it a clue? Well, the source material we're looking at says it's absolutely a clue. And it's a clue that points us to a completely different way of reading the entire book. See, the whole thing comes down to the glasses you're wearing when you read it. The source suggests that depending on your approach, the Quran actually presents two totally different realities. One reality is a religion for a specific group of people. The other, it's a universal law for all of humanity. Same book, two completely different worlds. All right, so let's get into how this actually works. The source material lays out something it calls the two-model method. Think of it like a showdown between two totally different ways of interpreting the text. So, in one corner, you've got the sectarian model. This approach reads the Quran using stuff that came way later, like traditions, historical accounts, and linguistic rules that were developed centuries after the fact. But in the other corner, you have the Quran as its own dictionary model. This one's completely different. It insists that the Quran has to be used to explain itself, kind of like a self-contained operating system where all the definitions are already built in. Okay, let's see this in action with a really famous verse, Quran 3:19. Now, when you read this through that first lens, the sectarian model, the traditional translation is pretty clear. It's used to establish Islam as the one true religion. Exclusive, final, end of story. But now, watch what happens when we switch to the other model. The meaning just completely flips on its head. The source argues this verse isn't about a specific religion at all. Nope, it's actually describing a universal law, almost like moral physics. The idea that the only system that actually works in the grand scheme of things is one based on surrendering to the truth. Okay, so this is the absolute key to understanding this alternative reading. We have to redefine some of the core words, and this is the important part, we have to use only the Quran's own internal logic to do it. We have to temporarily set aside all the definitions that came later. Let's start with the word deen. The traditional model says this means religion. Simple enough. But the source points out that when you actually track this word through the Quran, it consistently means something more like a system of consequences, cause and effect. It's about moral accountability, the operating system of reality itself, not a bunch of rituals. And that brings us to the big one, Islam. The argument here is that in the Quran, it's not a proper noun. It's not the name of a religion. It's a verb, a state of being. It's the act of surrendering to evidence, of aligning yourself with what's real and true. I love how the source puts it. It's a job description, not a club membership. And one more crucial term, fitra. The source describes this as our original programming. It's the uncorrupted moral software that every single human is born with. Think of it like your spiritual factory settings, that natural, built-in alignment with truth. And this, the Quran suggests, is the true essence of that state of Islam. And suddenly, just like that, the puzzle we started with just clicks into place. Abraham, Moses, the disciples, they weren't members of a religion that didn't exist yet, no. They were, at critical moments in their lives, entering a state of Islam, a powerful personal surrender to the truth that was staring them in the face. Even Pharaoh, in his last moments, finally gave in to the reality he had spent his whole life denying. Okay, but that leads to a really important question. If we're all born with this pure fitra, this natural alignment with truth, then how does it all go wrong? How does it get corrupted into sectarian religion, into this us versus them mentality? Well, the Quran gives us an answer, but it's not a person, it's a pattern, it's an archetype, the pharaoh. And we're not just talking about the guy from ancient Egypt. The pharaoh here is a timeless symbol for any system, any leader, or any ideology that creates division just to hold on to power. And according to the source material, this pharaoh pattern is the engine of corruption. It's how truth gets twisted. It works by splitting people up into groups, claiming it has the only path to salvation, and putting itself on a pedestal above everyone else. Basically, it takes a universal truth and shrinks it down into a tribal identity. And what's fascinating is how the Quran itself seems to diagnose this exact sickness. It comes down hard on those who split their system up into sects, and it uses some really strong language, calling those who just blindly follow rituals without using their reason the worst of creatures. So blind conformity and division, they're presented as the primary symptoms of this spiritual decay. So if there is a predictable pattern for how things get corrupted, it only makes sense that there's also a path back, right? And the source argues that, yes, the Quran lays out a predictable, universal path to return to that original state of truth, to get back to our fitr. The source actually calls this the heartbeat of the Quran, which I think is a great way to put it. It's a 5-step cycle. Step 1, we start in that pure state of truth, the fitra. Step 2, we fall into corruption and division. Then comes step 3, the turning point. We have to acknowledge we messed up. That leads to step 4, repentance, which really just means stopping the thing you were doing wrong. And all of that leads to step 5, restoration, getting back to that original state of integrity. And listen, this isn't just some abstract theory. The source shows how this exact 5-step pattern is the hidden blueprint behind the stories of pretty much all the major figures in the Quran. Adam's personal story of falling and returning, Abraham's journey of intellectual discovery, Moses leading a political liberation, Jesus confronting religious hypocrisy. They all follow the same universal map for transformation. Which brings us to the big takeaway. According to this way of reading the Quran, Islam isn't the team you start on. It's not a label you're born with or a club you can join. It's the destination. It's that restored, renewed, and honestly hard-won alignment with truth that you arrive at the end of this very human journey. So in the end, the source material's argument is that the Quran isn't meant to be read just as a history book or a rule book for one group of people. Instead, it's like a mirror reflecting a timeless cycle that's happening inside every single one of us. And that leaves us with a pretty deep question to chew on. This universal cycle of truth, corruption, and return, where are you in it?